and I felt my hand go up. And it wasn't like I was racing. I literally am telling you, I felt it go up. So I actually look up at it and I see, oh, it's up there. And I take my other hand that was working and I bring it down. So I look at him and I say, yeah, I just have one question. He's like, sure, what do you got? And my question, this is 100% truth, was, what's a missionary?
I think it's controversial. We have a little controversy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's such a hot take, but let's see.
Welcome back to the Global Sending Podcast. I'm Dave Wernz. I'm a missions pastor from Northern Kentucky.
And I'm Dave Matthews, founder and president of Reflejo, a Latin American missions agency to the unreached.
And together we're helping senders from all over the world navigate the ups and downs, ins and outs of multicultural partnerships. And we believe that we'll go better together. So thanks for coming along. Today we were just talking, I think it's controversial. We have a little controversy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's such a hot take, but let's see.
So we are...
Leave a comment if you think it's controversial.
Yeah, leave a comment if you think this one's a little too hot. So in our conversations, we almost always take the part of senders, right? That's the name of the podcast, right? We send.
Yeah.
And this is the other side of the coin where people are being called. And so trying to tease out what is the role and how does it function for workers to be called and for churches and organizations to send.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, how have you've played the part of many different characters in this scenario. How have you experienced it personally? What has calling been like for you?
Okay, so my own personal calling story. That's what you're asking about.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's a few different places because you've both witnessed people being called. You've had a calling, right? And then you've helped other people discern if they have calling. Yeah. And you've been a part of like helping people hey, I think maybe. Have you considered?
Yes, sure. Yeah, so I'll share my calling personally. So that actually came when I was in high school. I was part of a church, and
I don't think I've heard this one.
Yeah, I don't think you have.
Oh man, all right.
Yeah, so this is back in the day. I was in high school. I was part of a church that was part of a broader denomination, and every summer we'll go to youth camp, right? So a bunch of churches get together. They do this big camp, and all the kids go there, and they try to start dating girls from other churches. That's what we did anyway.
That's one missionary dating? Is that how
get close to Jesus and then come back to regular life. But anyway, one of these camps, I think it was when I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, I go and they invite a missionary to come and speak for one night. So this missionary was somebody that was going into Latin America to the Amazon.
Oh, wow.
And they were bringing teams to start kind of making inroads with indigenous tribes within the Amazon and share the gospel there. And he came and he showed pictures of what he was doing. He told his story. But more so than that, for me, he framed for the first time, hey, there is peoples and places out there that have no access to the gospel.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so unless somebody comes in from the outside that does have access to the gospel, like you and me and everybody in that room, nothing will change.
Yep.
And if nothing changes, they can't be saved.
Yep.
Right? And so it's the first time that I understood that very black and white. Okay, access matters, and not everybody has access. I just gotta assume
evenly distributed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, God spoke to me that day in that sense of, hey, there's people that don't have access to the gospel, and I want you to be part of that solution.
You have a role to play.
You have a role to play, and I didn't know what it was. And the way that was fleshed out is he does his whole spiel, and at the end he says, hey, if anybody is called, and there's that word, right? If anybody is called to be a missionary tonight, raise your hand. We like to pray for you. And I'm sitting there, somewhat in the back of the audience, this bunch of teenagers, and I felt my hand go up.
Oh, man.
So, and it wasn't like I was racing. I literally am telling you, I felt it go up. So I actually look up at it and I see, oh, it's up there. And I take my other hand that was working and I bring it down. I'm like, that was weird. And then I just felt it pop back up again. So by that point, they'd spotted me and they said, hey, come to the front.
Yeah.
So me and a bunch of other kids go to the front. We get prayed for by this missionary and a couple of other, youth leaders, pastors, and so on, and then taken to this side room to kind of, have more conversation. And that evening, I remember I ended up going back like late at night from that meeting to my cabin because everybody else was already back, like getting ready to go to sleep, and they had taken us to this side room. And my youth leader's waiting for me there. And when I come in, he says, "Hey, Dave." I said, yeah, what's up? He's like, I saw that you went up and got prayed for and you got a missionary calling today. It's like, that's great. I was like, and he just said, is there anything like I can answer for you? Is there any questions you have? And so I look at him and I say, yeah, I just have one question. He's like, sure, what do you got? And my question, this is 100% truth, was, what's a missionary?
Yeah, right? It's like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I had no idea what I was getting myself into at that point. But looking back now even, this was more than 15 years ago. After that day, never once did I question God called me to missions.
Oh, wow.
And so that was for me a turning point where I realized God is calling me to this. I don't know what this is. I didn't know what country, like what religion, if I had to learn a language or pick a career or just an organization to work with. I had no other pieces.
Yeah.
But I knew God had tapped me in the shoulder and said, hey, you're in, right?
Literally raised your hand.
Yes. Now, not everybody's call is that dramatic. I'll give you one more dramatic one from somebody in the organization. She felt called to the nations, but she didn't know where. And so one day she goes into her church sanctuary, or a church sanctuary, not her local church, but a church sanctuary, where they had just done a missions conference. And in Latin America, one of the things they love to do is put all the countries' flags they're praying for in the walls.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so this church had flags from all over the world, just, taped on the walls. And so she's just there on like a Tuesday after the conference. Like it's empty. She's just there. She's praying. God, show me where to go. And if you can picture this, if you're not watching, she put out her hands and she closed her eyes and said, God, give me a sign. Where am I supposed to go? Just give me a sign. And then she felt something. And so she opens her eyes during prayer. And the flag of Pakistan had fallen across her arms.
I thought you said it wasn't as dramatic.
No, this one I said was dramatic. So that there's
golly, man.
There's some very pointed ones where you're like, okay, that has to be God.
Oh, man.
There's no way that.
Now there's some missions pastor up on the balcony dropping flags on.
Yeah, I mean, if that's your mobilization strategy, it's working.
You got one.
But others, I mean,
that's wild.
Other people are not like that. Like I remember when I was at Moody, studying missions, my roommate, the guy I shared a dorm with.
North American guy?
Yeah. He is now serving in Nepal.
Oh, cool.
He's doing some really cool work. When he first went out there with his family, they were in some mountain in the Himalayas. He had to fly in by helicopter.
Oh, yeah, right.
To help them figure out how to write out their language so they could then translate the Bible. I mean, It's a very remote, obscure thing they were doing. Really, really cool, but very hard to reach place in terms of access. So at some point one night we sat down and he asked me, hey, how were you called to this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I shared the story, just share it with you. And then I turned around and said, hey, how were you called to this? And he looked at me, he said, well, I just read my Bible.
Yep.
I never got it. Like God never told me, hey, go do this thing.
Yep.
But I thought I read it and it didn't say, hey, Mark, this doesn't include you. So I'm here, so I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go. And if God wants to stop me, he can. And I'm going to go somewhere that's hard to reach. And if that makes God nervous, he's got my number.
Yeah.
So he just kind of like took it on himself to, I am going to do the most harebrained thing I could come up with.
Calling is a default.
Right. Yep. And God knows how to stop me.
Yep.
Right. Like if he wants me to not go, if he's afraid for my life, he'll let me know. He'll deny that visa. He'll figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I ran into that. The default is, because for us, for the most part, like we think of the default as, I'm going to stay until I'm called to go.
Sure.
And for him, his thought was, I'm going to go unless I'm called to stay.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a mind-changing thing that I thought was really cool to see his thinking, his background on that. And I've shared that
that's a rare one.
Yeah. I've shared that since with people.
But it's hard to argue with. Both of those sides are really hard to argue against.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, the flag fell right on you. Like, I don't know what to say about that. Or, yeah, the Bible does say go.
Right.
Right. As you go.
Right.
Kind of implies if you're not going, something ain't working.
But even think about the Great Commission, because we always focus on the text and not the context of that space, right? Jesus is talking to literally all the apostles. Everybody's there. It's not like, hey, all of you do this, but Thomas, you're benched. Like it's everybody's doing this.
Right.
And everybody you disciple, they're doing this too.
Make sure it's part of that. Teach them everything.
Right. It's teach them everything, including this
what
one
I just
thing,
told you.
Right. Which is go to all the nations, including this one thing, teach them to obey everything I have commanded you.
Yep.
And then if we go, from them to their disciples, to their disciples, to the disciples, all the way through, that lands on every single one of us alive today that's walking with Jesus.
That's a baseline. Yeah.
Yes.
So that is Yeah, my calling very different than both of those. It's more of a family tradition than anything. Like my parents wanted to be workers, and so I grew up just assuming I would go with them if they went soon enough. And so there was I can't remember a day in my life where it wasn't an assumption that I would be in cross-cultural work. And that changes. There's you're not in the same role. Right, that was pitched to you in high school.
Right.
And I'm definitely not on the field doing the same kinds of things. But even when I was working, I worked retail, for a decade. And everybody there, anytime I had a shift, there was a guy who would ask, so, did you buy your tickets yet? It was just a commonly, people just knew. If they knew Dave, they knew he was going.
And I think that's probably one of the first places where we diverge a lot from Latin America in terms of North America and sending from different contexts. In Latin America, when you're called, it's not often assumed it's possible or celebrated. I don't know if there's more to this story. Let me just interject a little bit.
No, that's pretty much it. I'm here.
Okay, great. I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Thanks. Go back a little bit to mine. So I get back from this camp as a teenager to my senior pastor at my Hispanic church, and I told them, hey, after the service, I pulled him aside for a minute. I said, hey, this thing happened at camp. I feel called to missions. And his best advice for a high school student that felt the calling was ignore it.
Oh, okay.
If God really wants you to go, he'll let you know again.
Wow. I was not expecting that.
So that was the zero nurturing, hey, have you read the book of Jonah, right? Let's interpret it differently.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So thankfully for myself, in some ways, I didn't take that to heart. But I also didn't get much in terms of support from my local church at that point to know how to explore my calling. And so I think that is, I don't think he was ill-intended. I just don't think he knew what to do with that.
Yeah, sure.
He gave the best that he could.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people in Latin America can find themselves in a similar position where their local church context, community, pastor, you name it, they get called and their community doesn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, everybody else is just as puzzled as you are.
Yes. And so oftentimes, and I'm sure you've seen this at a church level, if somebody has the interest in missions or that yearning for getting involved or that calling, as we're calling it,
right?
It can be very fragile at the beginning. And it needs to be nurtured, right? It needs to be encouraged so that it can grow and flourish.
Yeah. So we have tons of resources here. I'm oh man, I just put it in perspective or something. But have you seen that change in your time? And you said it's been, over a decade, 15 years. Have you watched that change at all? Or is there a different response available now? If a kid your age shows up to a church now, are there new ways of approaching it?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the church or the denomination or the context. There are places where there's paths. I mean, perspectives exist in Spanish, right? You mentioned perspectives.
Yeah, right. Kairos.
And so do other programs similar to that. We developed a program of our own internally that we use for coaching and missions at Reflejo. But the whole continent doesn't have access to us or to some of those things. They don't know about them.
Right.
More often than not, we're offering this to churches, to pastors, to leaders, and this is the first time they're running into it. This is the first. I mean, there's a church that reached out to us not too long ago, and they went through this, and they said oh, we didn't realize the Great Commission applied to our church as well. And so I think it's just it really depends where you land, right? Which is your church family where you get that calling.
Yeah. I think in some of the other contexts, you think about people that are coming from a more persecuted or oppressed culture, right? Somebody coming from North Africa or parts of Asia, and they feel that calling, right? That sense of, I too am a participant. I'm not just a recipient. I'm a participant in the Great Commission. Do you have advice for how they should move forward? Are there resources or people that they should be looking for? I mean, obviously, it's one of the reasons we want to have a podcast is to say there are pathways and avenues, right? To highlight some of those.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can think of perspectives in a lot of different places, but like you said, not every church has that.
Yeah.
Is there a word of encouragement you'd have for those folks?
So I would say a couple things. And again, one of the things that I really want to stay away from is trying to be an expert on everything.
Oh my goodness, no.
That part of the world, right? I know very, very little and I'm not very well connected there. But there's two things that come to mind, more principles than direct, like here's a resource.
Yeah, sure.
One is I do know, and I'm solidly convinced that God is calling people from everywhere.
Yep.
Right? There is no context, culture, big city, small town, rural, urban, persecuted, not persecuted country where you can just write off, hey, nobody from here will be called. Right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you're sensing God is calling you and you're for a place where that seems daunting or impossible, don't write it off categorically. Explore the calling legitimately.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And I think the second part of that, what we've seen in Latin America, is that people best explore that calling in the context, and I'm going to use a theological term here, I can define that in a second, of a sodality. So to frame that well, so I think Ralph Winters is probably the guy that normalized this term.
He's the people groups guy.
He's a people groups guy.
Right?
He normalized it back in the day. It's been around for a while. The Catholic Church used it, way before, but he normalized it for the Protestant churches of understanding there's one global church, right? Big C church.
Sure. Yeah.
Within the church, there is several expressions of the church, and there's kind of these two categories. The local church, the church where it's like we talked about last episode, all the sheep together, right? And wolves try to come in and we're going to protect the local church established.
Yeah. And
that's called the modalic or the modality, right? The modalic church, and the church sent, the church and missions. And that is where the sheep goes amidst the wolves and tries to expand the kingdom, share the gospel.
Yeah.
And that is the sodalic church. Because if you think about church, what is church? Church is believers in community, seeking God and living out his will, right? And there's a few practices that are done there.
Yeah.
But, if a missions agency is living in community as believers, worshiping God, studying the Bible, commuting as a missions team on the ground versus a local church expression here in Kentucky, right? We're both the church, but we're existentially different in how we go about being the church and our role to play within the body. So you have the church local and the church sent. And so the sodalic, the church sent, is this space where people that have a calling, where they are able to understand that calling, evaluate its legitimacy best, is with all those people that are going to be like them, right? The best guy to train a pastor is another pastor.
Yeah.
The best guy to assess and train the missionary is going to be another missionary. And so if you are looking to discern that calling, I would say look for somebody within that space in your context. It may be an indigenous sending agency. It may be a local missionary. It may be a missionary from outside the culture coming into that context to share the gospel. But they will have a sense of a framework of here's what it takes.
They've thought about it before.
Yes.
Right?
And so that's what I would gravitate to.
Yeah. I think that's really wise, is not doing it alone and not just going with your gut.
Yeah.
But really getting some input from people who have thought about it and prayed about it and have followed God down a path a little bit farther. Cool. I hope that gives a little bit of hope to folks that might be feeling isolated in their calling. But when you think, come back to how you guys have experienced calling, because you've been doing a lot of stuff in Latin America and in North America, but the context of Latin America in particular, where do you see calling discerned? Like, who really gets to speak into that in your context? So as a agency leader, but also as a member of a church, as you were a worker, where do you see that discernment really intersect with the calling?
So I think in Latin America, discernment is expected to be different than in North America. And the reason is here, for example, in the US, we're very individualistic, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm called. God spoke to me. It's me. I talked to the agency and I sent my pastor, hey, here's an FYI. By the way, I probably need a reference, right?
Right.
And that's usually a more normal path here in the West. In Latin America, the church in general tends to be very pastor-centric. What the pastor says goes.
Oh, okay.
To a very high level of authority in many places. I mean, I've heard there's been contexts where pastors speak into you can't date that person, or you should marry that person,
okay,
or you should or shouldn't take that vacation, and people listen,
and people do it.
People do it because the pastor said so. I've heard stories. Haven't them happen to us directly, but people that have ended up on the field, and you ask them, what are you doing here in Asia from Latin America? My pastor said they needed to send somebody. They chose me, and here I am.
He was voluntold.
Yes, exactly. And so,
that's incredible.
Calling in Latin America is expected to be very pastor-centric. And so what happens is people get this yearning, this desire, this kind of like sense of, I might be interested in this. And they have to go to their local church pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And that pastor can be their biggest fan and the person that's going to help them champion down the road, or they can be an immediately closed door at that point. The pastor's not bought in to that person going, or if they're not bought into missions,
it's not going to happen.
It's probably not going to happen, or it's going to be so difficult for that to happen. I think of like my experience with my pastor in my local church.
Sure, right.
I didn't make any progress in my missions calling till I went out of that environment into Moody, because I found another network where I could find access to this information. Most people in Latin America don't have that secondary access to something else.
Yeah.
So it's very pastor-centric. Another thing that's very important in Latin America, it's as Communal, it's your family, your parents. You defer a lot of honor to your parents, and that honor culturally translates to obedience.
Yep.
And so if your parents say you're not going, you're not going, right? So it can be for some people, there's those extra layers.
I can see how that could be more impactful in Latin America, but it's not non-existent here. I think one of the more challenging hurdles to recruiting and mobilizing in North America today is grandparents, right? Grandparents have way more, like they carry more weight.
Sure.
Than I ever expected. We weren't really, so our family dynamics are different, but it's a real challenge today, more so than what I would have expected for how
interesting
diverse the landscape is with family and how people move away. But that loyalty and the I think especially the expectations, like the how your education's going to be used, right? How your grandkids, like their grandkids, are going to live their life and where they're going to go. Yeah. So as grandparents get more freedom and they go move, or they pull up their life, or they go plan out retirement with grandkids in mind, they become very resistant to losing that chunk of their golden years. Yeah. And it's been surprising.
Sure.
How much influence they have.
Sure. And I mean, that's definitely real. I hear about that here in the States often. I think what I'm talking about, especially in the pastor side, isn't always that individual pressure. It's if I go to the pastor and he's not bought in, and they say, I'm going to go anyway.
Yeah.
And this is speaking from personal experience. I go to the rest of the church members, friends, community, and so on, and say, hey, will you support me as I go to the field? Every single time, the first question is, what does the pastor say?
Yep.
So if I fundraise here in the U.S., even in Grace Fellowship Church, that is probably, it may be a question, definitely not the first one, definitely not in every meeting.
Yep.
But that is typically the first one in every meeting in Latin America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. No, that's definitely not how most fundraising conversations go here.
Yeah.
So when you're evaluating somebody, let's say they come to Reflejo, right? Is that a question that you would ask? Like, what does your pastor say, or how does calling play into your evaluation of a worker?
I think like I mentioned, we asked a question about other people in other parts of the world. I think in some ways, missionaries and sidelities have a finer tune to assess calling. Churches locally will have a finer, better capacity to assess spiritual maturity because they've lived with people for a lot longer.
Okay.
Right? And so we typically would ask churches questions around spiritual maturity.
Yeah. Is this the right person?
Yeah. Do they strong believers? Do they, fellowship? Do they, whatever that spiritual disciplines might be, and so on, right? Are they in good standing with the church and morally? And is there any sin issue that we need to be aware of? But when it comes to preparedness for living cross-culturally, or the kind of person it takes to be able to count the cost and go, and some of those things, we typically look at that in-house. We're going to ask our questions because we know the landscape and what it takes to go to the field as an agency. And so we're going to look at those questions directly ourselves. Now, I would say the question of calling, do people feel a sense of calling? It's an important one for us because in Latin America, it's different than North America in the sense that there's a lot of people that are feeling that desire to go.
Sure.
Right? A lot of people are feeling that yearning to go. God is raising up a wave of Latinos to be missionaries.
Praise God.
Yes. But our sending capacity, individually as an org, but also collectively as a continent, is still very limited. So we have a lot of people, and only few of them can still be sent right now.
Narrow pipes.
Right, narrow pipes. So we want to send the cream of the crop, the best of the best that we can find. They're going to be easiest to place, to thrive, to multiply, so we can immediately turn around and look at the next one, right?
Okay.
We want to be good stewards of that.
So if I'm hearing right, you're saying you have a tighter filter because you have...
We get to be picky.
Okay.
Yes, we get to be picky. That's what I'm saying. And so calling plays into that, right? If you're not sure of your calling and you want to go to high risk place and you are sure you're going to high risk place, we're going to take that into consideration. And part of the reason is too, when you're somewhere, especially creative access, dangerous, and things start getting scary, whatever scary means in that context, you're going to ask yourself the question, what am I doing here?
Why am I here?
Should I still be here? And that's where, if your pastor told you to go, or if you're just like, hey, this is a good career opportunity for me, you're going to be the next plane home.
Yeah.
But if your answer is, God unequivocally called me to be here, if God raised my hand,
right, dropped the flag,
I try to lower it, he raised it again, and he wants me here,
you're not as quick to pull the e-brake.
That hasn't changed just because there's bombs flying in the air. Yeah. So calling makes a big difference for us.
Wow. So, man, that's an interesting place to be because it's not like we're just sending anybody with a heartbeat, but I would definitely not say that our sending has the luxury of being picky.
That's another thing in North America, that certain organizational models benefit from sending more people. Right? If you look at many mission agencies in the U.S., and I'm not familiar with all of them, but it's a common model, is the missionaries are deputized. So you're going to be sent by us, you're going to go raise funds, right? And then a percentage of those funds, 5, 10, 15, whatever the percentage may be, gets back to the organization.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the easiest ways for me to get more income and a broader network of donors is to send more people.
Say yes to more people, right?
Yes. And so if my sustainability depends on sending more people, and there's already a limited pool of people that I can send, I'm going to try to push to send as many of them as I can because it benefits me.
And it keeps the lights on for the people who are actually going to, want to be there long term.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's totally...
I wouldn't say it's bad.
Yeah.
But I'm saying at some points it could incentivize sending somebody because they can fundraise.
It changes the kinds of questions that get asked. Yeah, for sure.
It can do that. Now, in Latin America, our experience has been the financial infrastructure isn't always there to channel all the funds.
Sure.
And so if I can't channel all the funds, I can't take a percentage of all the funds.
Right.
So in our model, we actually get a very small percentage assessed only of the funds that come through the U.S. If they're raising funds locally in their home country, we don't see any of that. And so what ends up actually coming to us is it's much, much smaller than when it costs us to care, train, support, all the things.
Builds your faith.
Right. So I don't know that that's the best model. I'm sure we're going to have to learn as we grow. But I think one of the questions I'm asking myself as I talk to a candidate is this, sending them will cost me more than what I get back in return economically.
Yeah.
So that's not the driver. So if I'm going to have some skin in the game in sending them, I need to make sure they're a good investment.
Yep.
And I get to ask harder questions.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think for our church, we've changed. In the last few years, we had a sort of a model where sending was the success line. Did we send workers? Did the workers that we sent survive? Are they doing what we sent them to do? Sending was a huge component of how we viewed our success or our faithfulness. And I think we've shifted a little bit to where sending is a component, right? But it has a place, and it's not the only or even the most important resource that we have. And so it's really freed us up for these collaboration efforts and these partnership efforts where we might take a smaller role, but we might have a greater impact down the road.
Yeah.
And it has allowed us to, by taking that pressure off of like, we have to send,
Yeah.
it's taken the pressure off to where we can ask some harder questions about like, are we a good fit? Is this where God's actually called our church to
if you're
serve?
looking to partner,
right?
Then
we get to be a little picky too.
There's a large number of potential partners you might have. Yes. And so you come back to that. Going back to your question, what is different in Latin America?
Yeah.
I think when we look at candidates, gaps are treated differently. In the US, if you see somebody coming to your organization wanting to go to the field and there's clear training gaps of things they could have addressed before, typically you assume they didn't seek to address this, whatever that may be. Because probably if you Google that area, there's a training, an event, a conference.
Somebody's doing something.
Somebody's doing something, right? And so you look at gaps, and gaps are choices in North America.
Yep.
In Latin America, sometimes gaps are choices. Sometimes they've been looking hard to figure out how to navigate the thing, and there's just nothing available.
Yeah.
And so we can't always look at the same way at certain training gaps or capacity gaps.
Yeah, in the same way that we would say fundraising is a major part of discerning a call. We actually, we would look at how you tell your story to a large number of people as part of the discernment process. And if they're willing to invest, that carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a great evaluation tool. It's not quite the same as an agency asking practice-based, like experience-based questions because you've seen what works and doesn't work on the field. I'm not saying that your grandparents don't know anything about missions or that your cousin or somebody wouldn't know, but it's different. You telling your story and them nodding along, that may not be the best evaluation tool for saying, is this person called?
It is different in Latin America because in the US, you kind of have this assumption if there's a legitimate calling and they're a good communicator, people will give.
Yes.
If you take that assumption of people will give out, right?
Exactly.
Because the third factor is, are people mature enough in their generosity?
Yep.
Has this been normalized for them in their context, giving to missions?
Right.
In Latin America, you can't always say yes to that question. You can't often say yes to that question. So there's times where people might be legitimately called, good communicators, but the network they have access to is just not a network that is spiritually mature or financially capable to sustain them from the get-go. And so that might be a different factor where that community needs to still be trained more in generosity.
And we've definitely seen that in some of the harder contexts where I guess if it's a Muslim culture or context or an oppressive or even a war-influenced context, we've definitely seen those hurdles. And people have often internalized these circumstances to doubt the calling and say, because God put me here, maybe what I'm sensing isn't real. Yeah. And I think there's a role where a partner can come and help affirm or at least discern.
Yeah.
Right. So when a North American church or a North American pastor wants to collaborate or partner, let's stick with Reflejo workers, how can we, this is a real, I don't know if we've ever actually talked about this, how can we help with that discernment calling? What kind of questions would be helpful from our side? Is there a role that we play in that discernment?
For partnering with an organization or partnering with an individual, legitimizing their calling?
So if you and I are collaborating to reach a people group, and a candidate comes through, and you know that I have a heart for that people group, and this candidate has a heart for that people group, and you play matchmaker, do we have a role in discerning their calling?
If I play matchmaker, yes. And here's the reason why I'm caveating. So I think anybody that's a giver, right?
Yeah.
And we're called to be generous and we're called to invest in the kingdom. And so this applies to all of us. It's just a matter of where you give. But I think if you're a steward and you're going to give somewhere, you do have a responsibility as a steward to select where you're investing.
Yeah.
So when you come in and saying, I'm considering investing in one of the workers financially, there is a level to where you need to see legitimacy, transparency, seriousness of calling, and so on. I don't know that that's necessarily melded with the process organization has. I don't know that those get conjoined necessarily.
Yeah.
But it probably
we are separate organizations.
Right. But it's just like an individual donor would sit across from somebody and ask the questions that come to mind, that think of and decide and pray and discern. An organization in the US would have the same thing. Now, where I would say is, for that role, we seldom play matchmaker. And the reason for that is typically we want people that are deputized from Latin America to raise funds primarily
from their place, if
possible. We don't want to abdicate the responsibility of their churches or go around them from supporting them. The only way churches in Latin America are going to learn to flex the generosity muscle is by working out.
Practice. Get those reps.
Yes. So, and whatever your contribution might be will probably be outsized compared to what others might be. And so if your focus shifts somehow, or their focus, like if they're changing from that people group to something else down the road.
Yeah, it makes them vulnerable.
Yes, it makes them vulnerable.
So then how should we think about calling as an organizational partner? You said that's a little bit different. You made that nuance. Is there a way that we should be thinking about that? I have ideas.
You can start. Yeah.
I think about a calling from God to be mutually beneficial stewards, right? So a different level. There's people that are like, we're not on the field, like you and I are not on the field, right? And so, but we're still called to the Great Commission, to the least reached, and so I think having a deeper understanding on a vision that we're both called to, and then trusting that God is going to accomplish that vision using different tools and maybe even different methods than what we could or would choose. And so it's developing a level of trust that I don't have to control, or I don't even have to have influence, because I trust that we are called to the same thing and we're going to get there together. That's grown my faith, because I think there was a season of like trying to be responsible to our church and our donors, and I wanted to be in every meeting, and I wanted to be at every event.
Yeah, it gets hard to scale,
and it just isn't. It's not trusting, right? It's not. I was trying to be a good steward, but I think I was really disguising fear as wisdom. And I was like, oh, I'm just being wise. And I'm like, nah, not really.
I think there's a balance, right? Because what you don't want to do either is just jump in with a new person and invest heavily and never have checks and balances.
Right.
So you do want to start slow and progressively grow, and
we have to understand, right?
Yeah, totally.
So there's that curiosity and there's that sharing.
Yeah.
So it does take time.
Yeah.
But time alone isn't going to get it there. Right? We could be friends for 20 years and we still wouldn't have that relational trust that's built.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different things that come to mind for me as Western orgs want to affirm, global sending organizations. The first one would be going back to affirm the legitimacy of the calling.
Right.
It's, your people are called to the Great Commission too.
Yep.
Organizational structures that empower the living out of the Great Commission are legitimate as well.
Yep.
And the reason why I say that's important, at least in Latin America, many churches locally are willing to support their missionaries. And that's already an uncommon take where people will say, oh, really? They're actually willing. In some cases, that happens.
Yep.
What they're almost never willing to support is the infrastructure behind.
Exactly.
Whether that is the organization itself or like the people in the office, the senders, the mobilizers, the coaches, you name it. Because they don't see that as legitimate.
Yep.
Because they've just not matured.
Because they never got their passport stamped, right? So how could they be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, unless you're going, you're not doing it,
right?
Perspective, because they haven't seen the value historically of that yet. It's a new concept for them. So if you're working at the office of a Latin American missions agency and all you're seeing as you're trying to raise support or raise partners, share your calling, share what you're doing with your church, is the people write off or see your role as less than constantly, one of the first things I think an external partner could do is say, hey, what you're doing is legitimate.
Yeah.
Your context, your church and your community might not understand it yet, but it's part of the beaten path that we've seen happen.
Yeah.
Here, and
we've seen
get it.
Yeah, we've seen people doing it without, and we think it's better with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just that affirmation is significant. Like I mentioned, it's giving financially, but giving wisely. As you partner with an organization, you ask the question of what if we give to an individual?
Yeah.
I would say, well, typically with organizations, giving to an individual creates a lot of vulnerability because it creates a lot of volatility for their funding versus giving to a region, giving to a program, giving to a category.
Yep.
Where, again, Latino orgs might not be willing to give to the structure, or Latino churches might not be willing to give to the structure. External orgs can, and it helps balance the support level and the sustainability for some of those things. It can be coming along things that are pioneering or apostolic and just getting going, and the church is not ready to accept them yet because they're so new and fresh.
Yeah.
But
it needs proof of concept.
Right. Yeah. But an outsider can say, hey, we've gone through this before. We see that this is being done well and it needs to happen. I'm going to put enough gas in the tank till it becomes normalized. Yeah. Right. In that context.
Especially if you've got partners in other contexts or other regions where they've had to pioneer it, but they've done their proof of concept.
Yes.
Right. We've seen this work somewhere else, and we're pretty sure it's going to work from your context too.
Yeah.
Even if your churches haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that happen actually more often than some. So we've been really privileged.
And that's tricky with calling, right? Because here's what happens. That leader that's launching a new thing, you go to their pastor who doesn't recognize the importance of that. They'll say they're not called. They shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And you almost need to come as an outsider and say, I disagree with a local established church, which is like the one-on-one thing that you're not supposed to do.
I don't know if I'd say it that way.
But it's the thing where, like, missionaries will say, you always go to the national church and national believers and listen to what they say. And to a degree, that's good.
Yeah, let them lead. Yeah.
Yes, let them lead. At the same time, what I'm saying here is they might not know what they don't know. So investing in things that are pioneering and to help them get to where they still need to go can be helpful.
Yeah. Hey, look at that controversy. Yes, it was controversial.
You were right.
Ha, thanks.
Looks like you've been here before and I haven't.
But I think that's a really important role for a Western investor or a prayer partner to think about is how can we affirm the calling of the people who are making these pathways, whether it's the office worker or it's the recruiter mobilizer, right? Both of these are necessary, and it doesn't have to just be finance. So we have an encouragement team here that their whole job isn't to send checks, it's to send emails or text or a birthday card, a handwritten note that says you're doing kingdom work and your Father's proud of you. Just hearing that from somebody who understands your work or maybe even shares your work in a different context. So
I think that's big. I mean, if you think of the missionary that goes to the field, their experiences, I send newsletters and I get to take pictures, sitting down, drinking tea, doing all these things.
Right.
Come back to church, everybody's excited. If my church is good at member care, they might send a little care package for my kids and celebrate, whatever those things might be. If I'm always back home at the office, doing Zoom calls or emails and Excel spreadsheets all day, what do I put in my newsletters? What do people celebrate? How do they know to pray for me? When do they get a trigger to celebrate a milestone?
Yep.
And so coming alongside and figuring out a way to celebrate and encourage those people, that's huge.
And it hits different when your boss gives you a gift card as opposed to somebody who you just, the only thing that they're really invested in, it's not your productivity, right? It's your participation.
Yeah.
And saying this isn't, it's not, here's some Starbucks, now go work harder.
Right.
It's, here's a, here's
Chick-fil-A, that's more spiritual.
Oh yeah, no, Jesus chicken for sure. So here's a verse that I thought about when I read your newsletter. And I think it's not that those are free, but it's a different way of supporting than what most churches are going to have on their front, right? On the front of mind. So I really appreciated how we've been able to connect with some of the other staff workers, like the employees that, they're not necessarily on the front side of least reached people groups, but they're helping make sure that people stay, right? They're moving finance, they're doing member care. And I think those are pioneer roles in a way, right? In their own sphere of influence, those can be pioneers because they're making a way, oftentimes using cobbled together resources, and so there's they need just as much help, just as much support.
So we just answered the question, how can a Western partner come in and encourage something that may not be getting traction?
Yeah.
Let me flip to the other side of that. And what should a Western partner pump the brakes a little bit when maybe not every time the local church is saying this might not work, they're wrong. Maybe sometimes they're right? The local church is seeing something that we're not from the outside.
Yeah.
So what are some of those bases?
Yeah, I think you really broke down the roles of a church versus the agency when you're like, all right, is the character, spiritual development, is that there? And those are choices, right? So maybe the network isn't there, but is your prayer life adequate? And really embracing that role, not from a investor side, but as a shepherd. And so coming in, it's not attached to money, it's not attached to networks, but saying, I care for you as a person. And if God has called you to a difficult assignment, then it is your job to condition yourself to survive there. He will sustain you. But he's not going to make you eat your vegetables. And are you getting the kind of reps in that are going to let you survive spiritually, right? What is your scripture intake? How are you experiencing community now? And I'm not saying that a local pastor can't do that, but the capacity is different. And I think the availability, you can sometimes fool people closer to you because they give a lot of grace, or they know he's a good kid, he's got a good heart. But somebody from the outside, they don't have to look your grandma in the eye and say, we said no, we don't need that. So I think that's one way, is to really care for that, and then to provide solutions, not just critiques. And so because we do have more resources from years and years of specialized ministries, to be able to connect that with people who have that calling and saying, no, I do have a calling, but I've been trapped in sexual sin since I was in middle school. Well, okay, does your church have a counseling program, right? Do you have access to mentors? And that may not always be the case. If there are, that's great. But if there aren't, well, let's help bridge that gap and meet some of those spiritual formation needs if it's helpful. And so I think we've talked before, just walking in, because if all you have is a hammer, whole world looks like a nail. And so if you have come in with a program and like, we've got this discipleship program, it's worked everywhere in the world. I'm like, okay, maybe that's not how you lead, but the curiosity to say, is there a gap we could help with?
I think there's one more category. You talked a lot about the person going. I think about the national leader within Latin America, right? The organizational leader or maybe the pioneer launching something new. When do you know to pump the brakes there? And I think some of the things that come to mind for me, the first one is, at least in Latin America, and I think this is common to other parts of the global south as well, but we're very emotionally driven.
Okay.
Sometimes we see a problem, we have the passion, we have the zeal. We don't always come up with a strategic plan. And that's where the West is more robust. Right.
Well, we've had a lot more. We've thrown a lot more things at the wall.
And so I think one of the things that's helpful, where the West can come in and help even that person launching something, pump the brakes and say, hey, let's think through this well before we go deep. Not just us, but before you even go further down this path. Is this seems like there's a lot banking on hope and faith, and that's great. But we're also called to be stewards, using our minds, using our plans, using our strategies, not just over spiritualizing. God's got it.
And if you are a pioneer, the hope is people will come behind. And so being a visionary that way, not just for yourself, but for everybody who's going to come behind you, let's build a sustainable pathway. Not just for you. And I think we can we can take a longer view of that, because oftentimes guys that are in the throes of pioneering, they just don't have the bandwidth to think about the next 50 years.
So that's one side. I would think that for the plan for things to to grow that wouldn't grow otherwise.
Right.
I think it's a strategy, the plan, that coming alongside and helping them think through that part. It's key. I think the flip side is also true, is at times things do take off. And then oftentimes the challenge can be, well, this all centered around this one pioneer, this one leader. And if they didn't put checks and balances in place, if the whole thing depends on them, spiritually, they're very vulnerable. Right?
Yep.
Not only vulnerable to being tempted with financial corruption or sin of some sort or another, and people are going to let us lie because they don't want to kill the ministry, whatever that may be. And so I think as leaders that pioneer, partners coming alongside of us, asking some of those questions, maybe not necessarily being the check and balance always, but asking, how have you put this in place? What is in place? It might be a board, it might be a committee, it might be some sort of thing that's locally appropriate.
And helping make it actually land.
Yeah.
Right? Not just a plan, not just a white paper, but having said, no, actually, do you know somebody who would be a part of that board? Mm-hmm. I know a few people.
Yeah.
Right? Offering up that network, offering up that that time. That's another way to be generous. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't just have to be funding the guy that has the vision. Mm-hmm. You also get to say, no, we have a few other tools that you might need to help make that vision a reality. Yeah. Maybe it's a relationship, or maybe it's a season of relationship. So just because you're in with the guy at the ground floor doesn't mean you have to be there for the next 50 years. Yeah. We can put those in place to say, look, for the next 2 years, we're going to invest heavy to make sure that this calling is viable, that this vision that God's given you, this sense of calling that He's put in your life, it can actually grow and have a root, and eventually it'll survive on its own. But for now, I think it could use a little bit of framework, some structure around it, and that's not separate from the discerning process, right? It's not that we're constantly introspective about the calling, but let's give it some space and air to look at it in the light and say, look, let's get it down the path a little ways, so we're not just wondering if that hand raised was that just your emotional reaction? Sure. Was there a pretty girl there? Was it? I don't know, but let's walk down the path a little ways as we explore. Yeah. So that you don't have to wonder 15 years later. So we have a little bit more affirmation. People know what happened and can say, no, we weren't there for the hand being raised or the flag being dropped, but we have watched God work. We've watched God provide, and we've watched fruit happen. I don't think it's unrealistic to expect some fruit from a calling, even if it happens in that person's life. Right? It may not be baptisms, it may not be churches built, but you've grown, you've changed, you've matured, and God's used you, and that's fruit, and that's fruit that'll last. And I think that's part of the discernment of calling.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of danced around this question. I think I love to land with asking this question. How then does a Western partner, a listener, a viewer here, how can they look at their partner in the global South and honor that communal calling, potentially, without sidelining the individual conviction?
Yeah.
I have some thoughts. I don't know if you have any, but I'm happy to jump in.
I think the first thing comes to mind is you practice communal calling at your own level, your own church, and invite your elders and your community to participate in your in your sent one, right? And say, like, let's be a part of that process for our individuals as well. And you get more practice. And then it's not just a foreign concept that you have to mold yourself into or try to contextualize. It's your process too. Right? It's actually, that's how we discern calling.
Okay.
Here.
So I'm hearing from a Westerner in the table right now.
Right.
Become more communal.
Yeah.
Let me bring the other side of that coin and talk to the Latino in this side and say become more individualistic. And here's my hot take. I think we should honor communal affirmation. I'm using that word on purpose, right? Yeah. The family, the pastor, the church, the partners that are going to give and pray, they should affirm a calling. But ultimately, if somebody's going to war-torn whatever with their family, that person's opinion is not, their life is not at stake. You should be convinced that you're the one that's called to be there, that your family's called to be there. Yeah. Because it's your life on the line. It's your well-being, your family on the line. And so I do put more weight, more stock on the individual that's actually going to be putting themselves, right? That they're the ones where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
The rest of us, we're from our couches watching it on the screen. And that's nice. And we can throw in our 2 cents, but that's what it is. And so I do believe in some ways, Latin America, we can go a little bit too far to that side and reeling it back in to say, no, you need to be sure that you're going.
You yourself have to believe God is with you for this.
Yeah. So as an agency, we're asking ourselves some tough questions in this process, right? Like, as we're onboarding a candidate, what role does the church or denomination play in the screening process? Is it the character? Is it like, do we ask them for a reference and they can assign something? Should they be involved all the step of the way throughout the onboarding process joint with our org? Because at times, we've seen churches try to do that where they're at every meeting with the agency.
Yeah.
And the reality,
I've been that guy.
Yeah, and for us, as an agency, it almost seems like, how like there's news now that like the younger generation, Gen Z, I think it was, brings their parents to job interviews.
Yep.
Like, what are you doing?
Or
like,
ChatGPT.
You want to go out there by yourself to a new language and culture, and you have your mom or your pastor holding your hand here at the interview?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? So there's such a thing as too much, right?
Yeah.
But there's also such a thing as not enough, where we can go to the other extreme. I think the local church has nothing to offer, and not create an intentional place in the process to hear their voice and opinion.
Yep.
And so that's something where we're trying to figure out exactly where do we want to land. And I'm sure a lot of other orgs in Latin America and elsewhere are too. We're asking about the deputized model. Is it still a good test?
Yeah.
It's a good test when people are generous, when they see something good. Is it a good test in every context we're in where generosity to missions might not be normalized?
Yeah. It can't be the only.
Right. And if it's not the thing, what other things are there that we can see how the community affirms? They're calling. If it's not always funding initially,
what else you got?
What else? Yeah, what is it?
Yep.
We also ask ourselves a question often, like, what happens if we find a legitimate calling in a context where the pastor or the church leadership does not encourage it in the pastor-centric culture?
Yep.
Right. I shared my story. I can think of another example not too long ago. Our team started talking to a candidate. They actually knew her pastor, and the pastor, but our team talked to the pastor. He had the most amazing things to say about her. It was incredible. She was like God's gift to their church.
Yep.
Cool. We get onto the official process where she fills out an application and the pastor fills out a reference, and it is the worst reference I've ever seen. I actually looked at it after. I couldn't believe it. And we get to the bottom of it, and it's the pastor did not want to lose her.
I was like, he needs her there.
Yes, for the church.
It's so true.
And so if we didn't have a relationship, in this case we did in advance, we wouldn't have known how to explore that and navigate that if we just got the reference.
Right.
But what do we do with her then, right? Like, how do we work in this scenario? Another case similar to that, a few years back, we had a single woman called to go to the field, clear about where she was going, a strong sense of calling. We looked at it and it was legitimate. And the pastor just came to us and categorically said, until she's married, she cannot go. Single women have no place in missions.
Yep.
He told us that.
Yep.
And you and I know the statistics.
It's like, I don't know if that's going to...
Single women are the most common demographic in the missions field, right?
I guess God got a few things wrong there.
Yes. And so one of our questions, and one of the questions that many have to wrestle with, and if they haven't already, intentionally, I think they should. It's, where do we fall in that scale? Because you can look at those two scenarios and say, we're going to wait for the pastor and church to come around,
right, and
potentially sacrifice this candidate in the process.
Yeah,
because in Latin America, momentum process,
it's
fragile.
Yeah,
right. So we're going to wait for the church at the expense of the candidate.
Yeah.
Or do we want to be an organization that leans into the candidate, doubles down with them, and we hope the church comes along, but if they don't, we have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Where do we fall in that spectrum?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a hard question.
Crazy, man.
Yeah. So
if you have to deal with more than one of those a year, that's exhausting.
We have to deal with a few of those a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think both can be legitimate places where the organization can fall.
Yeah.
I think we need organizations on both sides.
Sure. And you don't need to have a policy about it, right? It's not a
right, not necessarily,
but you do have to know where the benchmark is.
Yeah, I mean, like, every org develops a culture and an ethos to them, ministry philosophy. Yeah,
yeah. And Lord willing, we hope anyway, conversations like this will help grow that culture where it's not uncommon to disagree, and people have some options. And so I don't envy you that. That's not a question that I have to wrestle with regularly.
Well, if you got some wisdom for me,
drop a comment.
Discuss with other people in the comments. We want to see it all.
We would love to know how God's growing other communities in this, because maybe God's given you guys some insight that we haven't stumbled on yet.
That would be good.
We'll take it, because we'll get there farther and faster together.
Yeah. Well, Dave, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think thanks for answering the call. I think it's an important conversation that if we don't wrestle through together, we're only going to find ourselves going on divergent paths. Yeah. And that's the opposite, right? We'll end up isolated and siloed for no reason, because we're not called to go just to the least reached. I think we're called to go together.
Yeah.
And so thanks for coming along. And again, you can subscribe, drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you, and share with your friends.